So something else I found in my little clear up the other day was this random piece of acetate. So I might start off by putting some of this dimensional magic on here. If I can get it unbunged. What have I done? That worked the other day. It's going to be a little bit glary, so see if I can get started. Somehow have squashed the nib of it in the lid, I think. So let's get that ungunked. And see what happens. I'm not sure how to do this. I think I'll do a bit of a blob and take it up. Okay, you can see that, trying to make that little raindrop shape. So anyway, I'm just going to cover this in my little raindrops. I'm not even sure if I'm going to use it yet, but I'm doing this first because they're going to take a little while to dry. So I'll get these finished and set this aside and think about what else I'm going to do. Maybe I'll do a bit more of that multimedia background. So I'm going to go a bit more mixed media, I think. And so I've selected a napkin. It's got some of my favourite colours, and I think the circle design also sort of is a bit reminiscent of rain, maybe, weather. Could just be my imagination. Okay, so I'm going to putting down some gel medium, matte medium. And I'm just going to place this on randomly. Not really thinking about it too much. Have a reasonable coverage, but not totally. And of course, even with this double page, you have to remember it's quite a small space. But I'm going to layer up the design. Once this is dried, put another layer of medium over the top to seal it and to make sure it's well stuck down. Just putting a little bit of water on my brush as well to make it a bit more fluid. Tends to get your napkins down a little bit easier, and hopefully not ripping them, but I don't mind if they get a little bit scrunched up. Okay, so now it's just wait till it dries. So having given this a bit of a helping hand to dry with my drying tool, you didn't want to listen to that noise. I quite like what's happening on this side of the page with the text behind it, but this side I think I can still see a little bit too much of the background. I don't think we really need that crocheted poncho particularly showing, so I'm going to add a little bit of gesso just to hit that back a bit, and once I've dried that I'll put some more of the tissue on top. Might just add a bit of the gesso over here, but not quite as heavy handed, just to push some of that into the background a wee bit. And I think the edge, hard to tell where some of my creases are, it's a bit wonky for the actual folding of the journal. Okay, so that will dull down a little bit as it dries, but then we'll put some more of the tissue on top and see if I'm happy with that. Okay, now I've chosen a stencil. This is one that I've cut myself. I've got some fluid acrylic green gold, and I'm going to add to it some interference green orange. It is, but it's going to give it that real glimmer effect. Oop, it's a nice little, don't want too much. Need to give that a mix around. Let's find something to mix it in with. So interference paint is it gives that sort of effect where you see two colours if you hold in different directions. I think I used it on that page there. That there is the other one that I own. They're a bit expensive, so that was a bit of a treat. That's in interference blue, so if you hold it straight you don't really see it, and if you hold it on a bit of an angle you can see that blue showing through. I used to do fabrics like that at one stage many years ago. That's what it reminds me of. Okay, so I've chosen this. I thought if I'm going for that rain theme, it's sort of another thing that looks a little bit like very heavy rain coming down, like sheets of rain I'd say. So I'll just have a bit of this. Still going for backgrounds, still going for the, hey, let's do a bit of mixed media. Use some of these resources that I've got that for the last little while I've been ignoring really, because I've been doing a lot more just paper crafts. This is quite bright, but of course we can always knock it back if we want to. And I had been thinking that I was going to do some sort of stamping, maybe even add some more papers. I'm sure that interference has actually made the colour brighter, more yellowy than it usually is, so it'll be interesting to see what it looks like once it's dried, because it usually does look exactly that colour. I probably can't tell because my stencil's got a bit of green on it, but it's looking quite yellowy. That's okay. I think that's part of the fun of not knowing exactly what's happening next, because you get to be surprised, or even figure out something that you didn't know you were going to do that turns out to be something that's worth repeating again. Okay, so that's that bit of painting done. Still a bit there, so I'll find somewhere to use that up and not waste it. So my next layer is going to be some stamping. Now I thought, how about digging around, finding some stamps that I've created myself, and I was reminded of those by again looking through my old journals and thinking, oh, I quite like those stamps, and some of the ones that I really like are missing, so either they're in another container hiding, and the other possibility is that I've taken them somewhere else, possibly to school where I work. That's where most good things disappear. But I've got a few different stamps I've made over time. I've got some that I have cut out of rubbers or erasers. I have got a whole set where I did the whole alphabet, which I've used, and they're quite effective. I might get those out at some stage. These ones are all ones that I cut just on that sort of kiddie foam that you get, and I used some die cutting and glued them then onto some foam board. This one here, which is probably one of the effective ones, is just the little squares out of that one, so I have used those, obviously you can see that, but the ones that I always thought were the most successful are these ones here, which are made out of EVA foam which is, this is a thicker version of things like sports mats and possibly the padding and some sports shoes and things are made of. You get those jigsaw puzzle mats that you use for kids to play on as well. It's that sort of foam. And I discovered that if you just cut the foam and then heat it, it separates. I think this is an earlier one where I was actually trying to carve things out of it, which was hard work, but I did make a video once about making stamps using this foam, so I might try and dig that up and put the link to it in this video description. But I might just use these ones here. I'm using watering can ink, archival ink. I'll do some more subtle colour with these. And I might choose something else to do with some black. This is getting a little bit tricky. I've put something underneath my page to try and make it level. It's the only thing with this sort of journal, it gets a bit lopsided. Okay, I think that will do. Don't want to overdo that one. So put those away, and I'm going to get some black and do some sort of script. Here's the one I had yesterday. I can't find it. I had my script stamp out. Oh, here's one. Craft. Okay. So the stamps this size, I tend not to try and put them on some sort of block or anything. I think there's very few times when you actually want the whole stamp. You're really just looking for parts of it. Oops, that one went a bit crooked. There we go, and that will do with the stamping. Well, even though it's been a few seconds from one video clip to the next, it's actually been a few days for me since I last looked at this, and when I made these raindrops being what it was like on the day, and it had been for about a week, and I've written out the words from the Eurythmics song Here Comes the Rain Again, falling on my head like a memory, falling on my head like a new emotion. I wasn't very happy with the way that looked, and so I actually typed it out, but I've come back and looked at it and I don't mind it. I wasn't sure about where I was putting it. Again, I don't mind it now, so I found some other things to put on the other side of the page. I have these feathers which I bought quite some time ago from AliExpress, and they're actually on really quite thick cardboard, and so they've always been a bit of a problem to stick down and sort of look right on the page. Also got that very wide border on them, so what I did was just peel one layer of paper off the back of it to make it a little bit thinner. I think it's helped for me with how it looks, and I've trimmed off that edge, so I'm going to just put some ink around the outside. This is cobalt blue archival ink, and it's probably going to take a while to dry on there because it's quite shiny, the card, so likely to be all over my fingers any minute now, but it doesn't mind. I don't mind that. better. Let's pop that there for a minute. So I've also just grabbed a piece of what we call calico. I think in other parts of the world they call it muslin, but for us muslin's a much looser weave of fabric. I was actually looking for some. I know where it is, but it's not there. I've got my sewing machine on the table behind me, and I sort of spin from this table to there, and this is literally coming out of my rubbish, as did this bit of thread. It's just cut off. So I now just want to think about how I'm going to stick all this down. So I have got out some matte medium. Terrible habit of going away and leaving my brushes in the water, and that medium pot probably stinks, but I'll just ignore that for a minute. Okay, so I could just use some art glitter glue on there, but I might use the matte medium because I'm thinking that I want to use that for this feather, because I think it'll glue down, and also for the thread. So I'm going to put the thread just literally stick it down there. Now, was I having that under or over this piece of paper? I think I was having it over. Of course, using matte medium means that you have a wetter page and you sort of have to wait for things to dry a wee bit more. But as this is sort of the end of my process, I don't mind it if this has to sit for a while. Okay, so it's on there. I actually have got into the habit of using tacky glue and glitter glue a bit more. Used to always use matte medium. It holds things down really well. Just trying to put things on slightly different angles, give it a bit more interest. See, there's the ink. Right, so that will dry and we'll be fine. So that is meant to be prompt number 13. Hobbies. Has to be some crafting. So what am I going to do on this side? Well, I think I've got this glue and brush. Even though this is quite thin, this paper. I'll be right under there. Whoops. I had done quite a bit of text stamping, so I wasn't sure how that was going to work, but it's covered up. Right, so that will do for that. So let's just stick down this piece of acetate now on top of there, which is a bit tricky for you to see. You can either see it or not see it, or it's glary. So I will use a bit of glitter glue. I'm just going to put a little bit in each corner. Maybe there. My dog's on the floor next to me making some very groany, sleepy noises. We've been away camping because the weather's been better, and so it's not raining now. It's nice and sunny and quite warm, being that it is summer here in New Zealand. Okay, so that probably would hold eventually, but my page is very bendy. So I've picked out a couple of washi tapes that I'm just going to stick down the edges of this. This one here is one that's made in the style of a Van Gogh painting. So I'm hoping this will stick. If it comes up later I can put a bit of glue on it, but I've never actually really experienced a big problem with washi tape like other people seem to think they have. Sort of want something in these other corners, but I don't really want it to look like it's just corner. I might just put this here as a bit of contrast. And I think that will be fine. It will hold down a little bit eventually. Okay, so I think that is my two finished pages for hobbies and on the day. Now I feel like I need to add a sunshine, but that was the day I started it, and that's how it's staying. So I hope you've enjoyed that. I'll try and get this uploaded and look at my next prompts, because I'm a few days behind now after being ahead. Thanks for watching.